Hello and welcome back. So we had been discussing the key concepts of our mysterious flame of McGinn and the qualia or the hard problem of consciousness of David Chalmers. We have also been discussing what has the take been of various philosophers like Tim Crane to Hale and Kim to Patricia Churchland to Janet and few more in this connection. We are continuing our discussions here with Tim Crane's mechanical mind in response to McGinn's mysterious flame. Crane presents a mechanical functional approach to philosophy of mind. He focuses on understanding mental processes through their functional roles, similar to computational models of cognition. Consciousness as functional. For Crane, consciousness could eventually be explained by the functional architecture of the brain, which contrasts with Chalmers' insistence that the phenomenal aspect of consciousness resists functional explanation. While Crane acknowledges the complexities of explaining consciousness, he remains open to the idea that a mechanical model of the brain could eventually address even the hard problem of subjective experience. John Searle argues that consciousness is a biological phenomena that arises from biological processes in the brain. It is as natural as other biological functions, but it is also subjective in nature. Searle rejects dualism as unnecessary. He believes that consciousness can be fully explained in terms of biological processes, although it possesses first-person characteristics that set it apart from other functions like digestion. Searle's biological naturalism, subjective and objective. Searle maintains that consciousness is a part of the physical world, but its subjective nature does not conflict with this. For Searle, there is no mysterious gap between physical and mental, just a need for deeper understanding of brain biology. Patricia Churchland's Matter and Consciousness. Churchland advocates for materialism and emphasizes the role of neuroscience in explaining consciousness. She opposes the notion of non-reductive properties, believing that consciousness is simply a function of brain activity. Churchland's eliminative materialism goes further than just physicalism. She suggests that common sense concepts like qualia and other mental terms might be replaced as neuroscience advances. In this way, her views directly oppose Chalmers' dualism. Both Hale and Kim engage with the mind-body problem from a physicalist stance. They acknowledge the difficulties of explaining consciousness but reject the need for dualism. Jaegwon Kim focuses on how mental states can be causally effective if they supervene on physical states. He is a reductive physicalist but acknowledges that explaining subjective experience remains a challenge. Kim would argue that any dualist theory like Chalmers introduces unnecessary metaphysical complications. McGinn's mysterious flame thus reflects his belief that the mind-body problem is insoluble due to human cognitive limitations. Chalmers' naturalistic dualism seeks to preserve non-reductive properties of consciousness and believes in the possibility of a new framework. These perspectives that we have so far discussed form a rich dialogue on the nature of consciousness and the explanatory gap between physical processes and subjective experience, which McGinn representing the pessimistic view and Chalmers the optimistic one in solving this philosophical puzzle. Our main concern now is, why is consciousness an enigma? Consciousness is often deemed an enigma because it resists easy explanation within the framework of physical sciences. The hard problem, as phrased by David Chalmers, underscores the difficulty of explaining why subjective experiences, qualia, like the redness of red or the pain of a headache, arise from physical processes in the brain. Despite advancements in neuroscience, there is a gap between our understanding of brain functions and the subjective first-person experiences we associate with being conscious. First, subjectivity of experience. Unlike objective phenomena, consciousness is inherently subjective. This, what it feels like aspect of experience defies measurement and is challenging to reconcile with objective third-person stance. Qualitative nature of qualia. The unique qualities of our experiences, like the taste of chocolate, are unlike anything else in the natural world and seem hard to reduce the mere chemical and electrical brain processes. 3. The third number, mind-body problem. The long-standing philosophical issue of how the mind, subjective experiences, and body, physical brain, relate remains unresolved. Dualism, materialism, and panpsychism have all attempted solutions, but each approach faces significant theoretical challenges. Epistemic limits. Some, like McGinn, argue that the human brain is evolutionarily suited for survival but may lack the cognitive capacity to solve the mystery of consciousness, suggesting an inherent limitation. Recent philosophers offer a range of insights and approaches, often building on or diverging from classic positions like McGinn's Mysterianism. Chalmers, as we know by now, has advocated for naturalistic dualism, suggesting that consciousness might require new fundamental laws in physics, much like gravity of electromagnetism, to explain subjective experience. He remains optimistic that consciousness might be significantly explained, but suggests we might need to expand our conceptual framework beyond current science. As proponents of eliminative materialism, the Churchlands, Patricia, and Ball argue that what we call consciousness may eventually be explained fully through neuroscientific terms, discarding folk psychological concepts like qualia. They believe that future science will reshape or even eliminate current concepts of mind and consciousness. Metzinger argues in Being No One that the concept of a self is an illusion, a construct of brain processes rather than an entity with real existence. He suggests that our subjective experience of consciousness might be an artifact of brain functions, shifting the enigma from consciousness itself to the mechanisms that produce the illusion of self. Galen Strawson, a panpsychist, argues that consciousness is a fundamental aspect of reality, possibly present at all levels of matter. His position implies that consciousness does not arise from a complex arrangement, but is instead a basic constituent of the universe, which might demystify it without reducing it to brain processes alone. Daniel Dennett is a leading proponent of a third-person perspective, suggesting that consciousness can be explained as a series of mental processes and functions rather than an inexplicable phenomena. He views consciousness as an illusion of sorts, arguing that once we understand the brain's processes in detail, the mystery will dissolve. Philip Goff. Goff supports a form of panpsychism, arguing that consciousness is present in all matter, not just complex brains. He sees consciousness as a fundamental feature like mass or charge, which might help bridge the explanatory gap without positing new physics like Chalmers suggests. So what are the trends in recent thoughts? We see these exploration of the mysterious flame to the hard problem of consciousness has led to an exploration of panpsychism. Panpsychism, once a fringe view, is gaining attention as philosophers like Goff and Strawson explore the idea that consciousness might be a universal trait of matter. Blurring of philosophy and neuroscience. Some, like the Churchlands, argue for a future where neuroscience fully explains consciousness, potentially dissolving philosophical mysteries into scientifically traceable problems. Epistemic modesty. The Mysterian position persists with philosophers like Nagel and McGinn, suggesting that human cognitive limits might render consciousness permanently mysterious, though few support this as a primary explanation. search for new frameworks. Chalmers and others propose expanding the scientific framework to incorporate new principles that could explain consciousness, though without clear proposals for what these principles would entail. Consciousness, we thus see, remains enigmatic because it challenges the core assumptions of physicalism and empirical science, requiring either an expansion of scientific understanding or an acceptance of epistemic limits. While some are optimistic about science's potential to solve this mystery, others contend that consciousness may ultimately transcend human comprehension. The Mysterious Flame by McGinn explores thus the perplexities of consciousness and cognition, framing consciousness as something ineffably complex and seemingly beyond the scope of human understanding. The term flame metaphorically captures the elusive, dynamic, and intangible nature of conscious experience, a burning mystery that resists reduction to physical or neurological explanations. McGinn calls it a flame because, like fire, consciousness appears both real and powerful, yet its essence seems to evade grasp. The hard problem of consciousness, as coined by Chalmers, refers to the difficulty of explaining why and how subjective experiences arise from physical brain processes. While the brain's structure and functions can be described in detail, there is no clear answer to why certain neural processes give rise to the flame of conscious experience. McGinn argues that consciousness might be inherently mysterious due to the limitations of the human mind. He proposes that our cognitive capacities might not be equipped to solve this problem, suggesting an epistemic gap rather than a solely scientific one. In a sense, the mysterious flame is McGinn's contribution to the debate, positing that consciousness could be an intractable mystery, a flame that burns brightly in human experience but is just out of reach for scientific analysis. This view contrasts with thinkers like Chalmers, who remain optimistic about potential future solutions to the hard problem. The mysterious flame idea, as advanced by Colin McGinn, aligns with a broader perspective in philosophy of mind often termed Mysterianism. This viewpoint holds that certain aspects of consciousness, particularly the hard problem of subjective experience, may be inherently beyond human comprehension due to our cognitive limitations. McGinn's version of this argument has gained some supporters and sympathizers, though the position is still somewhat contentious in philosophical circles. Prominent supporters or sympathizers include Thomas Nagel, who is known for his famous paper, What It Is Like to Be a Bat. Nagel argues that there is an inherent subjective character of experience that cannot be fully captured by objective science. He shares with McGinn a skepticism that science can explain conscious experience, though he does not label himself a Mysterian. Jerry Fodor, an influential philosopher of mind, has expressed sympathy for the view that human cognition may face insuperable limits. While he does not fully endorse Mysterianism, he is open to the idea that a mind may not be able to fully understand itself, especially in terms of explaining consciousness. Noam Chomsky has advocated for a form of cognitive closure, suggesting that there are certain aspects of the world that human brains are simply not equipped to understand. While not a direct supporter of McGinn's mysterious flame, Chomsky's skepticism about human cognitive limits aligns with the Mysterian spirit. Beyond the claim that consciousness might be an unsolvable mystery, the mysterious flame embodies several important themes. We will now be discussing the key essences of the mysterious flame beyond the mysterious position. Epistemic limits. McGinn posits that certain questions like consciousness may be conceptually unanswerable, not because of gaps in data, but due to the limitations of human cognitive architecture. dual aspect. McGinn stops short of endorsing traditional dualism, but suggests that consciousness has a dual aspect, both subjective and inaccessible. Unlike materialism, which expects science to solve consciousness, Mysterianism maintains that consciousness may have properties beyond physicalism. Human cognition as a barrier. Instead of seeing consciousness as fundamentally mysterious, McGinn focuses on our own cognitive structure as the barrier. He suggests we may simply lack the right conceptual tools to grasp the nature of consciousness fully. Challenge to material reductionism. This view is also a critique of the reductionist, purely physicalist approach to consciousness. While he does not argue for a supernatural or dualistic alternative, McGinn is critical of the view that consciousness will eventually be understood entirely through physical or neurological explanations. In a way, the mysterious flame is a philosophical call to humility, suggesting that while science has revealed much about the physical world, consciousness remains an enigma because our minds themselves are shaped by evolutionary contingencies that might limit the scope of what we can understand. Now we will be focusing our gaze on the shift from mysterious flame to familiar flame. A shift from mysterious flame to a familiar flame is conceivable, especially as perspectives of consciousness evolve and interdisciplinary research pushes boundaries. This shift would entail moving away from seeing consciousness as an inherently unknowable mystery, a la McGinn's Mysterianism, toward understanding it as a phenomena that, while complex, is ultimately explicable within a broader scientific or philosophical framework. Here are some key ways this transition could happen in the near future. 1. New paradigms in physics and neuroscience. The current mystery surrounding consciousness partly stems from the inadequacy of our physical and biological frameworks to fully capture subjective experience. A new theory that, for example, expands on quantum mechanics or introduces new fundamental properties in physics might bridge this explanatory gap. David Chalmers, for instance, has speculated that consciousness might require new psychophysical laws. If such theories are developed and validated, they could help make consciousness seem less mysterious and more accessible. 2. Panpsychism and Integrated Information Theory (IIT). Emerging theories like panpsychism and IIT, or integrated information theory, are gaining attention to their potential to normalize consciousness by suggesting that it may not be a unique attribute of complex organisms, but rather a ubiquitous feature of reality. Panpsychism posits that all matter may have some form of consciousness, however primitive, which could reduce the mystery of human consciousness by making it a fundamental familiar part of the natural world. Integrated Information Technology (IIT), meanwhile, attempts to qualify and quantify consciousness through measurable information integration in systems, offering a structured way to study and understand it. Artificial intelligence and conscious simulation. Advances in AI could play a transformative role in demystifying consciousness. If we can eventually simulate aspects of human consciousness or subjective experience in machines, it might shift consciousness from a mysterious domain to one where we can understand its mechanics and replicate them. The development of conscious-like AI might demonstrate that consciousness emerges from complex systems, normalizing it as a byproduct of specific organizational patterns rather than a mysterious phenomena. Reductionist explanations and cognitive science. As neuroscience and cognitive science progresses, they may reduce the complexity of consciousness by showing that it arises from identifiable brain mechanisms or processes. while eliminative materialists like Patricia and Paul Churchland suggest that understanding brain function will ultimately eliminate the need for concepts like mystery. Others argue that a reductionist approach could make consciousness more comprehensible and familiar without eliminating it. This approach would hinge on dismantling the subjective-objective divide and reinterpreting consciousness in terms of physical or functional processes. Shift in philosophical perspective, normalizing subjectivity. Philosophers like Dennett propose that consciousness is not so much mysterious as it is poorly understood because we approach it with outdated intuitions. By reconceptualizing consciousness as an evolved, complex series of functions, we might come to see it as an everyday aspect of cognitive processes rather than an inexplicable mystery. If the philosophical community embraces a more phenomenological or functional understanding of consciousness, viewing it as a natural process tied to brain activity and evolutionary needs, the idea of consciousness as a mystery may give way to perspective that sees it as a familiar flame within biological and cognitive sciences. 6. Interdisciplinary synthesis and new conceptual tools. A major impediment to understanding consciousness is that existing disciplines, physics, biology, psychology, each approach it from a different lens. As interdisciplinary research grows, with physics, cognitive science, artificial intelligence, and philosophy collaborating more closely, we may develop new conceptual tools or even discover unifying theories that explain consciousness in a way that aligns it more closely with known natural phenomena. This could involve building a shared vocabulary and framework for subjective experience that makes consciousness seem as familiar and quantifiable as other scientific phenomena. 7. Ethical and empirical insights into consciousness. As we become more familiar with the ethical and experiential dimensions of consciousness, such as empathy, self-reflection, and self-awareness, we might find ways to understand and measure these dimensions empirically, bringing them from the domain of the mysterious into the domain of the familiarity. Such insights could demystify our experience of consciousness, making it a more routine subject of study and discussion. So we see that though there are challenges to the shift, and while these advances hold promise, a few challenges remain. Qualia, the subjective experience, still present a significant hurdle because they are hard to quantify or explain through physical processes alone. Additionally, the intrinsic nature of consciousness, why it feels like something to experience things, may still resist even the most advanced explanations. However, if future research makes it possible to approximate or understand these subjective aspects, the concept of consciousness might indeed become more familiar and less enigmatic. And with this, we come to an end to our topic, which was the mysterious flame, and we have gone beyond the mysterious flame to the familiar flame. Thank you so much.